Welcome to the Tomosi Business Training Series. The basis of these sessions is to support the Tomosi Group staff and management to raise their capabilities and performance. The series is also a platform to share our experience with young entrepreneurs, making an effort to build their startups in Uganda and across Africa.
Good morning. Welcome again to our weekly sessions that really help strengthen who we are as Africans and explore the connectedness of our nationalities regardless of the borders that are, in the last lecture we called them deliberately fictitious. Fictitious because people cross borders, live across transnational borders, but it doesn't take away who they are as communities and groups of people. So we're continuing this session today to speak about trade and export in regard to strengthening unity, but most importantly, creating jobs and wealth for each of our communities, each of the nations, each of the territories where these borderlines pass, and to make this connectedness real and very personal in the households and in the lives of Africans and other people who occupy those places. I just want to let you know that when we speak of trade and export development as a strengthener of unity, we're not speaking about unity simply to appear friendly to a neighboring country or to other countries or peoples. We're not speaking about unity to please anyone or to show that, there is no tribalism. We're not being simplistic about this. We're both ideological and spiritual about this, because the Bible tells us that when a house is divided, it cannot stand. In the natural, we also know that a family, a community, a country that is divided along narrow lines, it cannot strengthen itself to face the problems of the world, let alone take its place in the world. So it is both spiritual and ideological, but most importantly, it's about growing wealthy and creating strong societies. The underlying element when we speak about the connectedness of the Great Lakes and entire Africa is really to create wealthy societies that promote what people like to speak about, but without giving it context, democracy. I have not seen a poor society that can be democratic. You need to raise the social status and classes, socioeconomic classes of the people in order for them to begin to value particular things. I used an example at the start of these sessions about manufacturing, when we had 40 workers at the farm, who every part of the farm simply would be a bathroom because they are working in the wilderness. They don't need to have amenities, or even if amenities are there, they don't take care of them. But as soon as we got strategic partners in the processing sector and took some of them to work in a factory, their timekeeping, their food and eating habits, their reporting, their clothing, their bathroom habits, everything changed because they had now been forced to enter another social class. But people don't have to be forced. Unity alone and trade can actually create the necessary wealth that changes society in order to value particular things such as democracy. Now, exports, which is trade, increase the national incomes of a country. Quite often we speak about consumption. When you speak of hospitals being looked after, doctors paid very well, teachers and schools, government taking care of them, anywhere in the world, you are speaking expenditure. You are basically saying, I will tax my citizens and spend on consumption. Consumption in economy is good because an economy that doesn't consume much, it means it cannot take care of the productivity of its citizens. You need to produce but production only is continuous if there is sales. Consumption is good. But if a society values more consumption than creating new income, that society cannot grow. It means you put X amount in the treasury, you eat X amount in the treasury. In other words, eating balances out earning, and there is no new income created. Exports increase the capacity of earning in totality for the economy, and this is why I want to use it as a tool to strengthen the connectedness we have as East Africans. Export also trains businesses to do better. There are practices, habits, customs, things that are culture to us as societies, as countries. But when we open the door, we can receive other cultures like we have done in Uganda. We are the net refugee receiving country, largest in Africa, and I think the 4th or the 3rd in the world. It's good to receive, but you have to give. And to give in export is the products of your hands, the new things, the great things that you are creating. Japan creates good cars and a brand called Toyota. They are on all our roads, 95% of them. But what do we give Japan in order for them to take in return the income they have taken from us? They also add on to our wealth. When you have businesses that are exporting to other countries, you've opened the door and now you need to open the doors of other people. What that means is that your business must perform better, must drop certain cultural traits, must speak in a particular language, must have particular deadlines and quality standards required to be able to supply a consumer in another economy. Whether that economy is in your neighborhood or it is thousands of miles away, a customer, a consumer, remains a demanding entity. And therefore, by you fulfilling these orders, you, the business, you change, you improve, you adapt new habits and behavior that make you longer lasting. You stop short-termism because you have to remain consistent in order for the product to catch on and have a brand on the market. Export also ends isolation of nations that trade with each other. If you trade with each other as nations, you are not isolated. You care about what's happening in your neighborhood. Often we care about what's happening in our cities, in our villages, and that's good. That's good to know what happens in Katakwi. But I think it's even more important to know what happens in Zambia, what happens in Congo, what happens in South Sudan, and take an active interest in order to ensure that these are markets that keep us growing, keep us stronger, beyond simply being brothers, Pan-Africanists, altruism, but these are markets that keep us alive. In other words, you end isolation, you end being inward-looking when you strengthen your export as a country. Like I said, nations that trade with each other, very rarely, you don't rule out the fact that they can, but they very rarely go to war. We have examples in Europe that Africans like to quote. When you look at Europe from 1914, actually in 1815, I could even go back 1789, after the French Revolution, European societies were at each other's throats. A group of them wanting to keep monarchies, a group of them wanting to be republican and run on ideals that the French Revolution had brought to the fore. This was ended in 1815 when Napoleon was defeated. For 100 years, there was a bit of pushing and shoving, but wars were contained until 1914. Germany going against Russia, Russia going against Germany, France going against Germany, England uniting against Germany. They are going to war because largely in 1914 and 1945, they are trying to protect export markets in colonies that they had cultivated, or they are trying to protect sources of raw material for their rapidly growing economies. But after the destruction of 1945, Europeans got together and started a community called the European Community, today called EU as we know. And they began to learn to share resources like coal. France, which had been at war with Germany and Italy, came together in 1951 or 53 and decided that they are going to share the natural resources of Europe that have been a source of contention. In the last 70-something years, we haven't had a war in Europe. This does not mean that the borders are not there. When you go to Belgium, in the north, they have Dutch-speaking Flemish people who are partly in the Netherlands, but also in Belgium. When you go to the east, they have Germans who, part Belgians, part Germans. When you go to France, where they share a border, you also have the people called the Walloons, who are in Belgium, but they have a French background. It doesn't mean that you do not have the Bassamias, the people of Chisoro, the Acholi people, the Madis, the Kakwas, the people of Karagwe and Ankole, the Bakonjo, and the Nandis on the other side of the mountain. This, the Bible tells us that God set the limits and places of where each nationality should live. But we must work with each other where we live and call ourselves nations and communities. It doesn't mean that Europe has lost its tribes, because the Flemish people take pride in their background. The Walloons do the same, but they call themselves Belgians. Trading, therefore, is a fundamental tool in stabilizing countries and therefore strengthening the connectedness of our countries. Today I want to speak about two things. If trade is important, what are the two key things that happen in trade and export promotion? So I want us to divide our trade into two, just for our audience to understand. And I'm speaking to you directly, young people. This sounds like, why don't you tell government to do these things? But government is you, myself. Whether that government is of a particular color, color yellow, or color red, or color blue, we are nation states. We are communities. We are Africans. We are Great Lakes. We are looking for that connectivity. And that connectivity is going to be that I have a role as an individual young person. First, in understanding. Second, in putting to practice these ideas. If we say trade, development, and export, if I call it that way, and we say trade, export, promotion, and we look at these two things, you will see where each one of us, as young people, as entrepreneurs, where we are best. Under trade development, there is such a thing called production increases. So if I am a seller of beans or maize or milk or beef, the first thing I need to think about is increasing the level of production from the current subsistence, meaning I'm only producing what is enough for me to eat and leaving very little for trade, for an income. The first activity in strengthening trade in any country, in any community, is to think of production increases. And production increases by doing a number of things. If you're a farmer like me, your animals will not rely only on the sun and the rain. When it comes to July and it's hot and there's no water and there's no grass, you must think of another type of food mixed up. You get grains, you get sorghum, you mix them, you produce a cake or something that an animal will eat. You have had production increases when the dry season is supposed to bring production down. The other way to increase production is increasing your skill to be able to do a job that you are doing in 8 hours in only 3 hours. which means that you have 5 extra hours to do more. Production increases is the starting point for a country to increase its trade capability and export capability. We strengthen that which works for us by trade, by export, and we become participants, not simply people speaking. And that makes us wholesome and strong, and we take our place as Africans in the world. Thank you so much, and God bless you.
We would like to hear from you. Please email us at info@tapmedia.com and visit our website at www.tapmedia.com. You can also visit our offices located at Tomosi Business Park, Luzira, Port Bell Road, or call 0414 220 702. Thank you.